Let me ask you a simple question. Why is it that you can eat a full meal, sometimes a large meal, and 2 hours later you're hungry again? Not just a little hunger, I'm talking about real hunger. The kind where you start looking around the kitchen, around the refrigerator, grabbing snacks, and wondering what the heck just happened. You just ate. Your stomach was full. So why is your body asking for more food? The answer may surprise you. Because in many cases, your body isn't hungry for calories. Your body is hungry for nutrition. And those are two very different things. This is one of the biggest problems with the modern food supply today. Most people are eating large amounts of food, but they're not actually feeding their bodies what they truly need to function properly. Let me explain. When you eat food, your stomach fills up. That's the mechanical part of eating. Your stomach stretches, your brain gets the signal that you've eaten something, and you feel temporarily satisfied. But that's only part of the story. Inside every cell of your body are tiny structures called mitochondria. They're often referred to as the power plants of your cells. They're responsible for producing the energy that allows your body to function. Your brain works because of them. Your muscles work because of them. Your organs function because of them. And these mitochondria require specific nutrients to do their job. They need vitamins, they need minerals, they need amino acids, they need fatty acids. In other words, they need real food. But what happens when you eat something that is highly processed? Something that is full of refined carbohydrates, artificial ingredients, preservatives, and chemicals? What happens is that you may consume a lot of calories, but very little actual nutrition. Let's say you eat a meal that contains 1,000 calories. Your stomach becomes full. You feel satisfied for a short time, but the nutrients your body actually needs might only represent 10% of what your cells are asking for. So what happens next? Your stomach may be full, but your body is still nutritionally hungry. And within a couple of hours, your brain sends you a signal saying, hey, eat again. Not because you need more calories, but because your body is still trying to obtain the nutrients it needs to function properly. And this is where the cycle begins. You eat again. But what do most people reach for when they feel hungry? More processed foods, another snack, another packaged item, another refined carbohydrate. Once again, you may consume several hundred more calories, but once again, your body receives only a small fraction of the nutrients it needs. So the cycle repeats itself. You eat, you feel temporarily full, then 2-3 hours later, you're hungry again. And by the end of the day, something interesting has happened. You may have consumed 3,000 or even 4,000 calories, yet your body still feels unsatisfied because it never received the nutrition it was asking for in the first place. At the same time, all those excess calories that your body didn't actually need are now stored as body fat. So you end up with two problems at the same time. You are overfed in calories, but undernourished in nutrients. And this is exactly why so many people feel like they're constantly hungry throughout the day. Now, at this point, some people might be thinking something. They might say, eating real food is expensive. And at first glance, that can appear to be true. If you go to the grocery store and you look at high quality meat, eggs, vegetables, and whole foods, they can look more expensive than grabbing a quick processed meal. But here's the mistake most people make. They assume they're going to eat the same amount of food as far as volume. And that's not what happens. Because when you eat highly processed food, your body doesn't receive the nutrients it needs. So you keep eating again and again throughout the day. Let's look at a realistic example. A typical day for many people might look like this. Breakfast from a fast food restaurant. Maybe an Egg McMuffin filled with hash browns and coffee. That alone today costs around $10 or $11. Then lunch. Maybe a Subway sandwich, chips, and a drink. That's about $14. And then there's dinner, a burger combo meal with fries and a soda. That's about $13. You add the snacks that most people eat during the day, a protein bar, a bag of chips, a sugary drink, maybe a candy bar. That's easily another $8 to $10. So when you add everything up, the average person eating this way is spending roughly $45 to $50 per day on food. And they may be consuming 3,500 to 4,000 calories of highly processed food. Now, let's compare that to a nutrient-dense whole food meal. For example, a large portion of beef or steak, 4 eggs, a serving of vegetables, half an avocado, and some olive oil. All real food, no processing. That entire meal typically costs somewhere around $15 to $17, depending on where you shop. And that single meal can provide an enormous amount of the protein, vitamins, minerals, and healthy fats that your body actually needs. So let's look at the numbers. The processed food pattern costs about $46 per day. The whole food nutrient-dense meal costs about $16 per day. That means the whole food approach costs only about 35% as much as the processed food lifestyle. In other words, eating real food in this example is about 65% cheaper. And remember, this example uses 1 meal per day, OMAD, which is what I personally do. But even if someone chose to eat 2 meals of real whole food, they would still often spend less money than the typical processed food diet. So the idea that eating healthy is always more expensive isn't really accurate. In many cases, the opposite is true. You simply eat less often because your body is finally receiving the nutrients it needs. And over time, those savings add up. If someone spends around $46 a day on processed food, that's about $16,700 per year. But if someone spends around $16 a day on nutrient-dense whole food, that's about $5,800 per year. That's a difference of roughly $10,900 every year. And that's just the food. It doesn't even include the long-term medical costs that often come from decades of eating highly processed foods. So when you really look at the numbers, eating real food isn't just better for your health. It can also be dramatically better for your wallet. Now, let's compare to a different approach. In my own case, I typically eat 1 meal a day. And people often ask me the same question: how are you not hungry? Well, the answer is actually very simple. Because when I eat, I make sure the food I consume is nutrient dense, real food, whole food. Foods that provide the vitamins, minerals, protein, and healthy fats that my body actually needs. So when I eat that meal, my body receives the nutrients it was asking for. My mitochondria receive the raw materials they need to produce energy. My cells are satisfied. And as a result, my body doesn't keep asking for more food every 2 hours because the nutritional requirement has already been met. This is a concept that many people have never been taught. We have been trained to think about food primarily in terms of calories, volume, calories in, calories out. But your body is much more sophisticated than that. Your body is constantly measuring the availability of nutrients. And when those nutrients are missing, your brain triggers hunger signals to encourage you to keep searching for food. Unfortunately, when the only food available is highly processed food, you end up chasing nutrition that never really arrives. You eat again, you eat more, and you continue to gain weight while still feeling hungry. This is why simply telling people to eat less rarely works. If your body is still nutritionally deprived, it will continue to send hunger signals no matter how much willpower you try to apply. But the moment you start feeding your body real food, something interesting happens. Your hunger naturally decreases because your cells are finally receiving what they need. So what's the solution? The solution is actually very straightforward. Focus on nutrient-dense foods, whole foods that come from nature. Foods that your body recognizes. Foods that contain the vitamins, minerals, and proteins your cells require to function. This means prioritizing foods like high quality meats and fish, eggs, vegetables, healthy fats, foods that provide real nutrition instead of empty calories. At the same time, it means reducing the foods that provide large amounts of calories but very little nutritional value. Ultra-processed foods, packaged snacks, refined carbohydrates, foods filled with additives and chemicals. The goal is not necessarily to eat more food. The goal is to eat better food. Because once your body receives the nutrients it needs, the constant hunger begins to disappear. Your appetite stabilizes, your energy improves, and the cycle of eating every 2 hours slowly fades away. So the next time you find yourself hungry shortly after a meal, ask yourself an important question. Was that meal truly nutritious, or was it simply a large amount of calories disguised as food? Because your body is always trying to tell you something. And if you listen carefully, you'll realize that hunger is often not a signal for more food. It's a signal for better food. Feed your body what it actually needs, and you may be surprised how quickly that constant hunger disappears. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you on the next one. And always remember, it's not about turning the clock back. It's not about slowing down the clock. It's about making that clock tick longer. See ya.